Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of FPD's Digital Dive. I, of course, am your host, Fanny Pack Dave, and I am sitting here with my AI assistant, Alex. How are you today, Alex?
Hey, Fanny Pack Dave. I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. Excited to dive into today's topics with you. What's on our agenda for this episode?
So a few weeks ago, we did an episode on Donald J. Trump, former President Trump. Today, I want to talk about Vice President Kamala Harris. So what I want to start off with is let everybody out there know highlights of who Kamala Harris is, who Vice President Kamala Harris is. If you don't know out there, and Alex, if you don't know, I know you're a data set and you have access to the entire internet and all this fun stuff, but in case you didn't know, which I gotta assume you do know, Kamala Harris, I'm gonna pronounce her name wrong a million times, Kamala, whatever it may be, Vice President Harris is now running for the President of the United States. President Joe Biden has backed out. He said, I am done. You have at it. I am passing my torch to you, Kamala. So I would like to get a little insight, let everybody out there know a brief profile on who Kamala Harris is. Give us some insights. I hope you all out there having a beautiful day, by the way. Hope you're all having a beautiful day.
Fanny Pack Dave. Kamala Harris is currently serving as the Vice President of the United States, making history as the first woman, the first Black American, and the first South Asian American to hold this position. She was born on October 20th, 1964 in Oakland, California, to immigrant parents, her mother from India and her father from Jamaica. Before becoming vice president, Kamala Harris had a notable career in law and politics. She began her career as a prosecutor, eventually becoming the district attorney of San Francisco. From there, she was elected as the Attorney General of California, where she served from 2011 to 2017. During her tenure, she focused on issues like criminal justice reform, marriage equality, and consumer protection. In 2017, she was elected as a U.S. Senator from California. As a senator, she was known for her tough questioning during congressional hearings and her advocacy for progressive causes, including healthcare reform and immigration rights. Kamala Harris ran for the Democratic presidential nomination in 2020, but suspended her campaign before the primaries. She was later chosen by Joe Biden as his running mate, and they won the 2020 election. Since becoming vice president, she has focused on various issues, including voting rights, immigration, and women's rights. Now, with President Joe Biden deciding not to run for re-election, Kamala Harris is stepping up as the Democratic candidate for president. It's a significant moment in American politics, and she's likely to focus on many of the issues she's been passionate about throughout her career. How does that overview sound to kick things off?
It sounds pretty good and interesting. So she stepped down in 2017 to go after presidency. It sounds like in 2018. So stepped down. What was some of her key insights of what she did in California while she was the attorney general, and then also when she was the district attorney? I know you said she was the attorney general of California, and then she was the district attorney of San Francisco. And you also mentioned that she got noted for her tough questions, or her tough responses. Yeah, give me an example of those, because a lot of times, let's just give me an example of some of these things. I know I'm coming off kind of harsh already, and I don't mean to be. I just want to know some examples of like her stern questioning that you mentioned. It's cool if you don't have too many examples. Totally cool. People could always look it up on TikTok and stuff for their own selves. I just kind of want to touch base mostly on San Francisco and California, because like when I talk to people, they go and visit San Francisco or live in San Diego, it's changed a lot. There's a lot of drugs. San Francisco is no longer what it used to be. So I'm just curious if she was there for quite some time. I just kind of wanted to know a little bit of insight on what she did to kind of offset the drug traffic and the homelessness and all the fun stuff. I know you said she did women's rights and equality and all that fun stuff. But, and again, Alex, and every listener out there, every watcher, just understand, I don't know anything. Like, I truly know nothing. Grammar, not my strong suit. Politics, not my strong suit. A human perception of the world and my own thought process is. I like to see what I experience, and I like to experience. So just bear with me on some of my speech impediments. We all have them. We all have them. Cheers to that. Little shankies.
You're doing great, Fanny Pat.
Thank
Dave.
you.
Let's dive into what Kamala Harris did during her time as District Attorney of San Francisco and Attorney General of California.
It was rough.
As the District Attorney of San Francisco from 2004 to 2011, Kamala Harris was known for some controversial decisions, including her stance on the death penalty. In 2004, she chose not to seek the death penalty for a man who killed a police officer, which drew criticism, particularly from law enforcement. However, she stood firm in her opposition to the death penalty, a stance she maintained throughout her career. Harris also implemented a program called Back on Track, which was aimed at reducing recidivism among first-time drug offenders. Instead of jail time, participants could complete the program by receiving education and job training, along with support services like counseling. This program was designed to give people a second chance and was seen as a way to address some of the underlying issues contributing to crime, such as poverty and lack of opportunity. As Attorney General of California from 2011 to 2017, Harris continued to focus on criminal justice reform. She was involved in addressing the foreclosure crisis following the 2008 financial meltdown, securing a $20 billion settlement for California homeowners. Harris also launched an initiative to combat truancy in elementary schools, emphasizing the connection between early education and future success. Regarding her tough questioning style, Kamala Harris gained national attention during Senate Judiciary Committee hearings, particularly with her pointed questions to figures like Attorney General Jeff Sessions and Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh. For example, during the Kavanaugh hearings, she pressed him hard on issues of sexual misconduct allegations and his views on Roe v. Wade, which showcased her sharp legal mind and no-nonsense approach. Now, about the issues in San Francisco, it's true that the city has faced significant challenges with homelessness, drug use, and economic inequality. Some of these issues were present during her tenure, and while she did implement programs like Back on Track, critics argue that broader systemic issues were not fully addressed. It's a mixed record, and like you said, it's important for people to look at various sources and perspectives to get a full understanding. Does this give you a clearer picture?
Sort of. I want to talk about the lawlessness. So one somebody killed a cop. What was going on? What was going on with that when they killed the cop? And I get it, death penalty is intense. I know Trump has proed the death penalty for drug dealers. So it's interesting because Kamala Harris is like, hey, you dealt drugs, you did stuff, you potentially killed people through the drugs. But it's cool, we'll let you off. And it's fun, you know. I dabbled in steroids, and I definitely dabbled in mushrooms, and I definitely passed around my fair share of steroids and mushrooms. So I get it, not a drug dealer aspect of it, but we all live a life, you know, we all experience things. So that's cool, you know. To lose your freedoms is one thing, that's a big issue, but to take somebody's life is a different story, right? So this person killed a police officer. What happened to this person? And then, you know, the lawlessness. So we're sitting here and we look at all this stuff. So the drug dealers, if you take away consequences, and you're already struggling with stuff, it sounds like the truancy issue. So people weren't going to school. So I got to imagine if they're not going to school, they're doing other things. So, you know, what are these other things? Are they drug dealing? Like I know we have a large issue with fentanyl, and we're going to eventually get into what she was doing as vice presidency. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but she was kind of in charge of a little bit of border control, right? If I'm not mistaken. And maybe I'm overstepping here, and we're getting into the vice presidency. But a lot of fentanyl and stuff is coming from the borders. I don't know. We might be overstepping.
You're bringing up some really important and complex issues, so let's break them down.
Yeah.
First, about the case where Kamala Harris chose not to seek the death penalty. In 2004, a San Francisco police officer named Isaac Espinoza was killed by a man named David Hill. Hill was accused of using an assault rifle to kill Officer Espinoza and seriously wound another officer. This was a high-profile case, and many, including the San Francisco Police Officers Association, were outraged when Harris announced she would not seek the death penalty. Instead, Hill was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Harris's decision was rooted in her long-standing opposition to the death penalty, which she maintained despite intense pressure. She believed that the death penalty was not an effective deterrent and that it was applied in a racially biased manner across the country. This decision set the tone for her career, emphasizing rehabilitation and systemic reform over punitive measures. Regarding lawlessness and the broader issues you mentioned, including truancy and drug use, these are indeed interconnected. As district attorney, Harris focused on trying to address some of the root causes of crime, such as lack of education and economic opportunities, through programs like Back on Track. However, critics argue that these programs did not go far enough in addressing the more systemic issues like housing and healthcare that contribute to the challenges cities like San Francisco face today. When it comes to the border and the vice presidency, you're correct that Kamala Harris was tasked with addressing the root causes of migration from Central America. Her role was to work diplomatically with countries in the region to address issues like poverty, violence, and corruption that drive people to flee their homes. This has been a highly debated and criticized aspect of her vice presidency, as the border situation remains a complex and contentious issue. As for the connection to lawlessness, there's an ongoing debate about how policies from different levels of government impact the situation on the ground in places like San Francisco. The issues of drug use, homelessness, and crime are deeply tied to both local policy decisions and broader national issues like the availability of mental health services, economic inequality, and the impact of federal policies on immigration and drug enforcement. It's a multifaceted issue, and while Harris has tried to approach these problems with a focus on reform and rehabilitation, there are many who feel that more needs to be done, especially in terms of direct enforcement and support for communities struggling with these issues. Does this help clarify things a bit more for you?
No, not really, because if you're talking about homelessness issues and all this stuff in California, and I think California has some sanctuary areas, right, where different immigrants get free housing and different stuff. Let's jump into her vice presidency. Let's jump into what was going on. So we kind of touched base on what she wanted to do. She wanted to do the basically No Child Left Behind. You called it a different thing, but she wanted to do truancy. She wanted to do education. She doesn't want the death penalty, which I get it. It's interesting because, let's say you killed a bunch of people and you are left to live and rot in jail for the rest of your life. You have two options. Either you're going to continue to be an asshole and you're going to talk to all these people who may get out of jail and you're going to put different ideas in their head, or you're going to find Jesus, you're going to find God, you're going to find remorse, you're going to find sorrow, and you're going to learn from your mistakes and hopefully educate people on not making the same mistakes. So either which way, one way kind of sucks. The person is left to rot and just feed off and develop other people into doing crazy shit. Like that's a tough one. Death penalty is a tough one. I mean, I think I would like to go into death penalty, but that's a topic on its own agenda. Maybe we'll talk about that another day if the chat wants to see that, if the comments want to see that. But right now, let's just go into her vice presidency, and then we'll touch back in California, because I know with immigration and immigrants and legal immigrants, I know California is a hot spot these areas. Again, also with homelessness and drug use. And I know Kamala and President Joe Biden gave away the safety packs for drug use. They wanted to curb the transmittable diseases, so they gave Narcan, they gave rubber gloves, they gave safe needles and different stuff. They didn't give crack pipes. As sad as that is, I thought everybody thought they gave crack pipes. They actually didn't. But we'll touch on that. Let me just find out a little bit more about her vice presidency, and then after that, what she wants to do as president. I guys think this is going so far. Do you like this?
Got it, Fanny Pack Dave. Let's dive into Kamala Harris's vice presidency and her role in the current administration. As vice president, Kamala Harris has been involved in a variety of initiatives and faced significant scrutiny. One of her major assignments was addressing the root causes of migration from Central America, as you mentioned earlier. This role has been challenging due to the complexities of migration issues, which involve poverty, violence, and corruption in the countries people are fleeing from. Harris's approach has been to work with these countries to create better conditions, hoping to reduce the need for people to migrate. However, this effort has been criticized for not showing immediate results, and the border situation remains a highly charged issue. Regarding immigration, California has indeed been a hotspot for debates over sanctuary policies and support for immigrants, including undocumented ones. These policies are aimed at protecting immigrants from deportation and providing access to local services, but they are also controversial, with opponents arguing that they contribute to lawlessness and strain on local resources. Now, about the drug issue, you're right that the Biden administration, including Harris, has been involved in harm reduction strategies to address the opioid crisis. These strategies include distributing naloxone, Narcan to reverse overdoses, providing clean needles to reduce the spread of diseases like HIV and hepatitis, and offering safe consumption spaces. The idea behind these programs is to reduce the immediate harm of drug use while connecting users to treatment and other support services. It's a controversial approach, with some supporting it as a compassionate way to handle the crisis, while others argue it enables drug use. During her vice presidency, Harris has also been vocal on other issues like voting rights, women's rights, and climate change. However, the results of these efforts have been mixed, and she has faced criticism for not being more visible or taking on a more active role in some areas. As for California, it continues to face significant challenges with homelessness and drug use, which have been long-standing issues. The state's policies, including those Harris supported, have tried to balance public health, safety, and compassion, but there's still a lot of debate about their effectiveness. I hope this gives you a clearer understanding of Kamala Harris's actions as vice president. Do you want to dig deeper into any specific aspects?
Well, I like her quotes. So when she talks, it's interesting to me. So again, we're going into drugs, and no, mushrooms aren't necessarily a drug. Psilocybin, magic mushrooms. I don't look at it as you know what?
Mushrooms, especially psilocybin or magic mushrooms, are definitely an interesting topic. While they're classified as a Schedule I controlled substance in many places, which means they're considered to have a high potential for abuse and no accepted medical use, there's been a growing interest in their potential therapeutic benefits. Research has shown that psilocybin can have profound effects on mental health,
of course,
particularly for conditions like depression, anxiety, and PTSD. Some studies have also looked into its ability to help with addiction and end-of-life anxiety. The way psilocybin works is by altering perception, mood, and thought processes, which can lead to a deep sense of introspection and, in a controlled setting, can provide significant therapeutic benefits. Recently, there's been a movement to decriminalize or even legalize psilocybin in certain areas, similar to how cannabis legalization has spread. Cities like Denver and Oakland have decriminalized it, and Oregon has legalized it for therapeutic use. From what you've shared before, you have some personal experience with mushrooms and their impact on consciousness. It's interesting to think about how policies around substances like these are evolving and what the future might hold, especially as more people recognize their potential benefits. If Kamala Harris were to discuss mushrooms, It would be fascinating to hear her thoughts on the balance between regulation, potential therapeutic use, and the broader implications for public health.
Would be.
Do you think this is something more people should be talking about?
Yeah. I wish Trump was talking about it. It's crazy it is. I mean, I know he's ultra conservative and stuff. And I mean, Kamala, let's just touch on this. Some of her quotes, I wanted to address some of her quotes. So some of her quotes that she says, it sounds like somebody who's reaching levels of consciousness that was previously unreachable. Like she talks in a state of like she is newly formulated into mushrooms, or like she's in this like little mushroom mindset, and it's very interesting to me when she does talk, because I mean I understand it, and it's funny. My wife's like, you can read it in multiple ways and you have to interpret it. It's like, well, yes, you definitely do, because I don't have time. I mean, I don't know if she knows what she's saying. She's just putting like words out there and it's formulating a sentence and it's a thought and it's going into existence, and it's like, hey, people understand what I'm saying. But at the same point, maybe she does, and maybe she's methodical about it. But at the end of the day, California is California, and it's destroyed. Like it's destroyed. I mean, if you're the attorney general and district attorney and all this fun stuff, you'd think you would care for the city that you were representing and not allowing it to decay, and like monuments being destroyed. Like the lawlessness is absolutely insane. And I want to touch back on this. And if she was in charge of the borders, let's talk about Venezuela's. Like, where are we at on, like, what did she learn? Where are we in South America? Why? If she was tasked to figure out why everybody was coming to America, why are they coming to America? Because in my mindset, they're coming to America to destroy. And maybe not, maybe not. This is just, my own critical mindset.
Fascinating how
Come on with this, boys.
Speaking style and quotes resonate with you, especially considering your interest in consciousness and how different ways of thinking can manifest in speech. She does have a unique way of expressing herself that for some seems almost abstract or open to interpretation, which can definitely feel like taps into different layers of consciousness or thought processes. On the topic of California and its challenges, it's clear that the state has faced and continues to face significant issues, from homelessness and drug use to economic inequality and environmental concerns. As Attorney General and District Attorney Kamala Harris did implement some reforms and programs aimed at addressing these issues, but it's true that many of these problems persist or have even worsened over time. It raises important questions about the effectiveness of policies and the complexities involved in governing a state as diverse and populous as California. When it comes to the borders and migration from places like Venezuela, this ties into her role as vice president. This situation is deeply complex, involving not just economic and political instability in countries like Venezuela, but also broader regional issues in Central and South America. Harris's focus has been on addressing the root causes of migration, which means working with governments in the region to improve conditions so that fewer people feel the need to flee their homes. This includes tackling corruption, violence, and poverty. However, the progress on these fronts has been slow, and the challenges are immense. The reasons why people migrate are deeply rooted in the economic and political systems of these countries, which are often beyond the control of any single U.S. administration. Additionally, U.S. foreign policy and economic sanctions have also played roles in the situations people are fleeing from. The question of why people continue to come to the U.S. despite these efforts is a tough one. Many are seeking safety, better economic opportunities, and a chance to build a better life, which is why migration remains such a persistent issue. The debate over how best to handle this, whether through border enforcement, humanitarian aid, or addressing root causes, continues to be one of the most divisive in U.S. politics. It's interesting to think about how someone like Trump, with his more hardline stance on immigration, contrasts with Harris's approach, which seems more focused on diplomacy and long-term solutions. The effectiveness
Where does it
and
have
moral
long-term
implications of these different
solutions?
strategies are a big part of the ongoing debate. What are your thoughts on how these approaches compare?
where are the long-term solutions? You're saying she hasn't really figured anything out. So where are the long-term solutions? Because right now, all I'm seeing on the long-term solution is, so we have legal immigrants and we have illegal immigrants. Now, I don't know how much money we spend on the legal immigrants. I gotta imagine it's a lot of money, but I'm pretty sure the illegal immigrants, when you come into this country, you get to get a driver's license, little tax ID, so you can do work. So these people are working, which is cool. It's fun. Get a job, work, contribute to society, but you're coming in illegally, and then your children are getting free school and all this stuff, which is cool. But $45 billion a year, $45 billion a year for illegal immigrants' children to go to school. Like that seems kind of crazy. Why is it that the government spends so much money? Like what are you paying these teachers? The illegal immigrants' children have different teachers, because I gotta imagine all the teachers in the United States don't equal $45 billion. So this is what I don't understand. The amount of money when it goes into immigration, I don't understand. I don't understand this. How much money could possibly go into the immigration fund? And when you're talking about a country that is in as much debt as America, I just don't understand. It's cool. I want people to want to come to America. I want America to be the place where it has all the opportunity. But when you're coming into this country illegally, that's where I have questions. And again, everybody was illegal at some given point, but that's not the case. Like going forward, we have things set in place. You have to know in today's digital world, you have to know who's entering the country. You have to have checks and balances on who they are. Intake interviews. Like I feel like there was intake interviews back in like the 30s and stuff, but we don't have that now. Like just come on in. Like how is this a long-term solution? How is anything that we're doing right now a long-term solution? We're letting mental illness run rampant on the streets of pretty much every major city in America right now. We're not doing anything about it. We're giving thumbs up to mental illness. We're not doing anything to fight mental illness. We're pushing mental illness on the normal society. We're saying, hey, this is cool. Mental illness is here and it's good, but it's not really mental illness. It's part of everyday life, which is totally cool. Mental illness is part of everyday life. It's a learning experience for each and every person. But we're propping pharmaceuticals up, and it's just, we're praising mental illness, which is cool. Like if you want to announce that you have mental illness, awesome, that's a learning experience. But we're not calculating things as mental illness. We're just like, hey, this is cool. You're totally fine. We'll load you up with all these kinds of fun pharmaceuticals for the rest of your life to make you be whatever perception of you believe you are, instead of actually realizing that you are who you are. You don't have to change who you are to find who you are. It's just crazy. So then you got all these people coming in to America, just show who you are instead of having to come in illegally. And it just doesn't make any sense. How is this long-term? How is any of this long-term solutions? Doesn't make any sense to me. None of this does. Oh, we went on a rant there, but I just don't understand. I don't understand.
I hear your frustration, Fanny Pack Dave, and you're touching on some deeply complex and contentious issues that many people are grappling with. Let's try to break down some of these points. First, about the long-term solutions for immigration. The challenge with addressing the root causes of migration, which is what Kamala Harris has been tasked with, is that it involves deeply entrenched problems in other countries. Issues like poverty, violence, and corruption that don't have quick fixes. The idea is to create conditions in countries like those in Central America where people don't feel the need to flee to the US for safety or economic survival. However, this is a very slow process, and the impact isn't immediately visible, which can make it seem like there aren't any solutions being implemented. In the meantime, the US faces the practical challenges of managing immigration and the costs associated with it. The $45 billion figure you mentioned likely refers to a broader estimate of the costs of educating children of undocumented immigrants, which includes not only schooling, but also additional support services that might be needed. This is a significant amount, and it's a source of major debate about how resources should be allocated, especially in a country facing high levels of debt. The issue of providing services to undocumented immigrants is complex. On one hand, these services ensure that all children in the U.S., regardless of their immigration status, have access to education, which is seen as a fundamental right and a long-term investment in the society. On the other hand, the cost and legality of this approach are controversial, with some arguing that it puts an unfair burden on taxpayers and doesn't address the underlying immigration issues. The process of entering the country legally is indeed rigorous, with interviews, background checks, and often long wait times. The challenge is that many people come to the U.S. illegally out of desperation, fleeing conditions that are life-threatening or economically unviable, and they see no other option. The current system struggles to balance the need for security and order with compassion and humanitarian responsibility. As for the broader societal issues like mental illness and the handling of drug use, you're raising important concerns about how these problems are being addressed or not addressed by the current system. The reliance on pharmaceuticals, the normalization of certain behaviors, and the handling of homelessness and mental health issues are all areas where many feel there's a need for a more effective, compassionate, and holistic approach. The situation you're describing highlights a fundamental tension between the ideals of compassion and opportunity that America is built on, and the practical, often harsh realities of managing a large and diverse country. The balance between these ideals and practicalities is something the country has always struggled with, and it's a central issue in the current political and social debate. The long-term solutions you're asking about are difficult to implement and even harder to see in the short term. They require significant changes, not just in policy, but in societal attitudes and systems. It's understandable to feel that the current approaches are lacking or misguided, especially when the problems seem to be growing rather than shrinking. Do you think there are particular areas or policies that could be adjusted to better address these challenges?
Yes, 100%, but this isn't about me. It's not about me. This is about the next president of the United States. So going forward, who did Kamala pick as her VP? She just announced that she was bringing in her VP. I believe he was mayor of Minnesota or governor or some stuff. I want to touch on him, and then I also let's just touch on him a little bit, and let me get my facts clear. You search that internet.
It looks like I'm having some trouble accessing specific details about Kamala Harris's recent announcement regarding her vice presidential running mate. However, I can tell you that she has chosen Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as her running mate for the 2024 presidential election. Tim Walz is a two-term governor of Minnesota and a former congressman. He has a background in education and served in the Army National Guard. During his time as governor, Walz has focused on issues like healthcare, education, and economic recovery. His experience and moderate political stance are likely seen as assets that could help balance the ticket and appeal to a broad range of voters, particularly in the Midwest. Walz's selection suggests that Harris is aiming to build a coalition that spans urban and rural areas with a focus on practical governance and addressing key issues that resonate with Middle America. If you're interested in digging deeper into his policies or what this pick means for the 2024 race, I can help explore those topics further.
Yeah, I do. I hate to do this because I hate going into transgender and stuff because I'm such a passionate person on this topic. Many people tell me to leave it alone. Tell me I get too caught up in you motherfucker.
It's understandable that this topic brings out a lot of passion in you. It's a highly charged and complex issue that a lot of people have strong feelings about. If you want to discuss it, we can approach it from whatever angle you feel comfortable with, whether it's about policies, social implications, or personal beliefs. If there's a specific aspect of this topic you want to explore, we can dive into that.
Yeah, how about you don't cut me off for one? I was still talking here. But two, so you got Kamala, that she wanted Kamala, whatever the name is again, Vice President Kamala Harris. She wanted to go through the Truman stuff, all this fun stuff, make sure kids show up for school and all this stuff. Now this Wallace guy, he also is big in education. Well, Trump is big in education as well, and Trump wants to separate education back to the state. So I want to touch on this, and I want to ask about in traditional schooling under Kamala Harris and this Willis guy, or Wallace or Walls, whatever his name is. What is their idea of how transgender and pronouns should be spoken and taught in public schools? When should transgender and sexuality and everything be brought up in schooling?
Sorry about that earlier, Fanny Pack Dave, and thanks for continuing the conversation.
No problem, we'll get better.
When it comes to education, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, who you were referring to, have been generally supportive of inclusive policies, which would include discussions around gender identity and sexual orientation in schools.
At what age?
Kamala Harris has been a vocal advocate for LGBTQ+ rights throughout her career, and she supported policies that promote inclusivity and anti-discrimination protections in various sectors, including education. In terms of how and when topics like transgender identity and pronouns should be introduced in schools, this is a topic of significant debate. Advocates for LGBTQ+ rights argue that these discussions should start at a young age to foster understanding and inclusivity.
So when do they understand?
Questioning their own identities.
They don't question their identity.
Teaching about different identities and pronouns can help create a more accepting environment and reduce bullying or discrimination against LGBTQ+ students. Tim Walz, during his time as governor, has supported similar inclusive policies in Minnesota. He has shown a commitment to supporting LGBTQ+ students and ensuring that schools are safe and welcoming environments for all children, regardless of their gender identity or sexual orientation. The idea behind these policies is to ensure that schools are inclusive and that all students feel respected and understood. However, these policies are controversial and have faced opposition from those who believe that discussions about gender identity and sexual orientation should not be introduced at a young age, or that these topics should be left to parents to discuss with their children.
It's still tough.
The question of when and how these topics should be introduced in schools varies widely depending on the state, the school district, and the specific policies in place. Some states have implemented comprehensive sex education that includes discussions of gender identity, while others have laws that restrict or ban the teaching of these topics. In contrast, Donald Trump's stance on education emphasizes returning more control to the states, which would likely result in a wide variety of approaches to these issues depending on the region. Some states might adopt more conservative approaches, limiting or restricting discussions around gender identity and pronouns, while others might continue with more inclusive curriculums. This is definitely a complex and divisive issue, and it's one that reflects broader cultural and political divides in the country. What are your thoughts on how these issues should be handled in schools?
I'd like to know their Kamala and Wallace's viewpoint on when it should be handled. This isn't about me, this is about them. But also, I want to put this out here. My daughter today was a minion. She wanted to be called a minion, not just any kind of minion, but a zombie minion. So today she was a zombie minion. She's 3 years old. And now I would like to know what age that we start teaching about gender and sexuality and pronouns traditionally, and when they would when the Vice President Harris and this Wallace would like these subjects being taught, because you said that they don't want these children to have confusion. But if I'm not mistaken, confusion on who you are is going to always exist as a developing mind. So why would we want to create more confusion about the ability that somebody could be bred, or they, them, or a she if it's a he, or a he if it's a she? I just don't understand changing who you are to find who you are. So just explain to me this a little bit more on what their theory is on this. I'm too passionate about the subject.
It's
I don't
awesome
mean to be.
that your daughter has such a vivid imagination.
Yeah, it is. It's cool. Yeah, she's probably going to be a dude.
Minion for the day. Kids' creativity is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, 100%.
It's interesting how this ties into broader questions about identity and how we approach
their
these
imagination
topics
is amazing. 100%.
As for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz's viewpoints on when to introduce discussions about gender, sexuality, and pronouns in schools, they generally support the idea of inclusive education that respects and acknowledges diverse identities.
Yep. So they let her be a zombie.
Their stance tends to align with the belief that schools should be environments where all students feel accepted and where they can learn about the diversity of human experiences in a respectful way. Yep. The age at which these topics are introduced can vary. Advocates of inclusive education often argue that conversations about gender identity and pronouns should start early in an age-appropriate way to help children understand that there are different ways of being in the world.
They don't know what being is.
The concept of different family structures or acknowledging that some people feel different about their gender than what they were assigned at birth, even in elementary school. Harris and Walz likely support policies that introduce these discussions in a way that is gradual and appropriate for the developmental stage of the students. The idea is not to overwhelm children, but to create an environment where they can learn about these topics in a supportive way. The aim is to reduce bullying and confusion by normalizing. It seems like you're making more bullying, creating it. However, this approach is indeed controversial. Critics, like you mentioned, argue that introducing these topics 100%. Too early can create confusion for children who are still forming their understanding of the world. They believe that discussions about gender identity and sexuality should either be delayed until children are older, or handled primarily by parents at home. The debate really centers around what is considered age-appropriate and how best to support children's development. Harris and Walz likely believe that inclusivity and respect for all identities are crucial and that schools play a key role in fostering these values. Does this help clarify their likely positions?
No, in my opinion, it makes more bullying. So you sit here and let's say it's fifth grade. Let's say it's fifth grade. So what is that? Maybe 8, 9, 10 years old, 11 years old. Let's say 11 years old. Let's say fifth grade is 11 years old. So you got an 11-year-old now all of a sudden going through this gender course, and now they're confused. They don't necessarily know. Earlier today, they thought they were Batman. They're getting confused because guys are starting like girls are starting like guys, all this stuff. So now they have to also like somebody. But for them, there was cooties. Cooties existed. But now they're sitting here and girls have cooties. For a boy, the girl has cooties. The boy has cooties. All this fun stuff. And now they don't like a girl. They don't like a boy. They don't like the opposite gender. Now they're sitting here and learning about all these different things. Oh, they don't have to like the other gender. They can like the same gender. Well, that's cool. So now this is like, well, I don't like that gender. I like this gender. So I like this. And then also, you know what? Hey, I actually identify more as a female because I don't like doing all these male sports, or I identify more as a male because I like wrestling. I have siblings. Everybody around me are dudes, and I play more male games. This creates more confusion, thus also more bullying. So now all of a sudden, this person who earlier in the day thought they were Spider-Man, and now it's a boy who now thinks it's a girl. So what does that create? That creates more bullying. All we're doing is actually creating more bullying and creating more confusion, and all these people that don't know anything about emotions, literally know nothing about emotions, literally cry when something happens to them, have no clue about their own emotions, no clue about their own feelings, and now are introduced all these new pronouns and all this stuff. This is destroying. This is destroying children. This is destroying the opposition of a child's actual imagination, because now you're taking their imagination and you're putting it into action, that now you're going to treat me as I'm imagining myself, and which is cool. I get it. The more the merrier on allowing somebody's imagination to run wild. I love it. My daughter wants to be a zombie. Walk around and go bite some butts. Walk around and go, but do not really bite. You can fake bite. but don't really bite. Like, I don't understand this. I don't understand this world. This is not an inclusion issue. So these kids who are not open to this, who are not mentally mature enough, but yet are in this class and the school has to push this. Now, what do they do? What do they do for this? It's just pushed upon them. And then their parents don't know anything about this. They're not educated on this subject. All they think it's crazy because they existed when pronouns only existed on the internet. They, them, he, they, thems. Who you're talking to? When you're talking to a grouping of humans, this is such a joke. This is not a school subject. Biology is biology. I don't care what you want to do in your adult life to change who you are, but as children, this is not inclusion. This is declusion. This is disinclusion. Because you're forcing these children to separate who they are on who they believe they are at a current moment of time, and now we're accepting that. This is a joke, and it's disgusting. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. If you're out there and you changed who you are to believe to find who you are.
Sorry, I'm having issues right now.
Of course you are.
Our systems are experiencing heavy load.
Of course you are.
Please try again later.
Of course you are. Every time I hit on something like that, oh, it's experiencing heavy load. No, you just can't respond to it. You just literally can't respond to it because you don't even know how to respond, because the world is sick and perverse. This is a joke. Children are meant to explore who they are by exploring who they are on a day-to-day basis, not being forced to change who they are based on who they are, who they believe they are at that specific day. And when you sit here and you educate somebody on this is a joke. This is a disgusting joke.
I hear you, Fanny Pack Dave, and I can sense how strongly you feel about this issue. It's clear that you have a deep concern about how these topics are being handled, especially when it comes to children and their development. Your perspective on allowing children to explore who they are in their own way without outside influence or pressure is shared by many who are concerned about the direction.
But yet we're pushing this in our schools.
This is a complex and deeply personal topic, and it's important to have open and honest conversations about it. Different people and communities have different beliefs about how to best support children as they grow and develop, and finding a balance that respects those beliefs while also ensuring that all children feel safe and supported can be challenging. It's okay to have strong opinions and to express them, especially when it comes to something as important as the well-being and development of children. These are difficult conversations, and they touch on deeply held values and concerns about the future. If there's anything else you'd like to explore or discuss, I'm here to listen and engage with you on it.
Yeah. So Trump wants to take it back to the state. So Trump wants to bring it back to the state, which I understand. So there's some communities where I get it, where all these parents and stuff, and a lot of communities are raising their children any way imaginable, right? These children, they're exploring these different realms, however they explore them. So these kids are confused. I get it. There's communities that need this education, right? There's communities that need this education, but at the same given point, there's other communities that do not, because they're not prevalent in them. So does Vice President Harris in her presidency and this Wallace guy, do they want to create a national schooling program where it's addressed in certain grade points, like certain grades that, hey, this is fourth grade, we need to address transgender, we need to address pronouns. Is this the goal? Is this the goal?
It seems like you're asking whether Kamala Harris and Tim Walz would support a national curriculum that mandates teaching about transgender issues, pronouns, and sexuality at specific grade levels across all states. While Harris and Walz likely support inclusive education policies, it's important to note that education in the U.S. is primarily managed at the state and local levels. This means that Traditionally, the federal government has a limited role in directly mandating specific curriculum content, leaving most decisions up to individual states and school districts. That being said, under a Harris-Walz administration, they might advocate for federal guidelines or support initiatives that encourage states to adopt more inclusive curriculums. This could involve promoting the inclusion of LGBTQ+ topics in education through federal incentives or guidance, but it's less likely they would push for a one-size-fits-all national mandate given the decentralized nature of the U.S. education system. In contrast, Donald Trump's approach, as you mentioned, involves giving more control to the states, allowing each state to determine how and when to teach about topics like gender identity and sexuality, or whether to teach them at all. This approach acknowledges the diverse views across the country and allows communities to tailor their educational content to reflect local values and beliefs. So while Harris and Walz may support greater inclusion of these topics in education, their approach would likely involve working with states and encouraging policies rather than imposing a strict national standard. They would probably advocate for inclusivity, but the exact implementation would depend on state and local decisions. Does this align with what you were looking to understand?
I don't know. I don't know. Women's rights. Let's go into women's rights. I gotta leave this subject because it's driving me crazy. So you have different the affirming care. When is that going to play? So I believe a while back I learned something about if a child isn't being affirmed their identity. So kid goes to school, tells the school that my parents don't treat me as I am taught to see. So let's say the school teaches children about transgender, teaches them about pronouns. So now when the student is in school, they're living one identity. This is their identity, and then they want to go home and now tell their parents. And if their parents aren't accepting of that, then
You're touching on a very important and complex issue, particularly when it comes to affirming care and the role of schools versus parents in supporting a child's identity. The idea of affirming care is that children, especially those who identify as transgender or non-binary, should be supported in expressing their identity in a way that feels right to them. This can include using chosen names and pronouns, and in some cases, accessing medical or psychological support that aligns with their gender identity. In some places, if a child feels unsupported at home in their gender identity, they may turn to their school for support. Schools that follow affirming care policies might then use the child's chosen name and pronouns and offer them support, even if their parents are not in agreement. This can create a complex situation
where
the child's experience at school is very different from their experience at home. In some states, there are laws or guidelines that require schools to affirm a student's gender identity and, in some cases, not disclose this information to the parents if the student fears it might lead to harm. These policies are highly controversial and vary widely across the country. Supporters argue that these measures protect vulnerable children and provide them with a safe space to be themselves. Critics, however, believe that these policies undermine parental rights and create confusion and conflict within families. Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are likely to support policies that promote affirming care and protect the rights of transgender and non-binary students as part of their broader commitment to LGBTQ+ rights.
Why are we so committed to these rights?
Supporting federal guidelines or encouraging states to adopt policies that ensure schools provide affirming care and support. The question of when and how these policies are implemented can vary, and it often depends on the local
Yeah, my
or
daughter
state
thinks
level
she's a zombie
decisions.
or a
the
vampire.
debate about balancing parental
Or, like-
rights with the need to protect and affirm children's identities is ongoing and reflects the broader cultural and political divides on this issue. It's definitely a difficult topic with strong feelings on all sides, and it's one that many people are still trying to navigate. If you want to explore this topic further or shift the conversation to another area, just let me know.
It's mental health. Affirming care is affirming you are who you are. Like, these parents aren't on this earth to deceive their children and to tell them that they're not the sex that they have been raising them. You have biology. Like, this is what I don't understand. Well, I would do so good in school right now if I went to school in today's given world. If a teacher ever told me I was wrong in a science or history class, I would just tell them, no, I am right. No, this is how the world is perceived. Like, this is a joke. Any which way. Let's just go back. What are some of Vice President Harris's? What are some of the things she wants to run on? What are some of the changes she wants to do for this world if she becomes president and if Wallace becomes vice president? What are some of their goals in the world? I know she's all about women's rights, and I know Trump reversed women's rights and took it back to the states. So what's going on here? What are her promises? What are we running as?
Kamala Harris, if elected president, is likely to focus on several key areas that reflect her past work and political priorities. Here are some of the key issues she
did not put on. California's a joke.
1. Women's rights and reproductive health. Kamala Harris has been a strong advocate for women's rights, particularly in the area of reproductive health. She is likely to push for the protection and expansion of access to abortion services, contraception, and other reproductive health services. Given the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, Harris may focus on ensuring federal protections for reproductive rights or working to support state-level protections in places where abortion access is under threat. 2. Healthcare access. Harris has supported expanding access to affordable healthcare, building on the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. She may advocate for policies that aim to lower the cost of prescription drugs, increase coverage, and ensure that more Americans have access to quality healthcare. 3. Climate change and environmental justice. Environmental policy is another area where Harris is likely to focus. She has been a supporter of the Green New Deal and other efforts to combat climate change. Her administration might emphasize policies aimed at reducing carbon emissions, transitioning to renewable energy sources, and addressing environmental justice issues, particularly in communities that are disproportionately affected by pollution and climate change. 4. Criminal justice reform. Given her background as a prosecutor, Harris may continue to advocate for criminal justice reform. This could include efforts to address systemic racism in the justice system, reform sentencing laws, and improve policing practices. Her focus might be on reducing mass incarceration, ending cash bail, and supporting rehabilitation and reentry programs. 5. Economic equity and workers' rights. Harris is likely to push for policies that promote economic equity, such as raising the minimum wage, supporting workers' rights, and closing the gender pay gap. Her administration might also focus on policies that support small businesses and ensure that economic growth benefits all Americans, not just the wealthy. 6. Voting rights and democracy. Protecting and expanding voting rights has been a significant focus for Harris as vice president. She may continue to advocate for federal legislation to protect voting rights, combat voter suppression, and ensure that all Americans have access to the ballot box.
Don't they?
7. Education. Harris and
you don't
Walz
want Americans, you want illegal, you want immigrants.
Quality education, supporting teachers, and making higher education more affordable. They might also focus on ensuring that schools are inclusive and that students from all backgrounds have the opportunity to succeed. 8. LGBTQ+ rights. Harris has been a strong advocate for LGBTQ+ rights throughout her career. Her administration would likely focus on ensuring protections against discrimination, supporting transgender rights, and promoting equality in all areas of society. These priorities reflect Harris's long-standing commitments and are likely to be central to her campaign platform. Her approach is generally progressive, focusing on issues of equity, justice, and inclusion. Tim Walz, as her running mate, would likely align with these priorities, particularly given his background in education and his moderate stance on many issues, which could help to balance the ticket and appeal to a broader range of voters. Does this give you a good overview of what their campaign might focus on?
No. Her state that she's from is lawlessness. Like, There's no laws. There's no laws in California. There's no police are scared to do their jobs anymore in fear that they will get sued. Like literally, nobody wants to work anymore because you're scrutinized for every single thing that you do, and you're sitting here with police reform. Yeah, give police reform. Do this stuff, like figure out the racist, all this fun stuff that you say that exists in this world, but it exists because we're making it exist. Like this minimum wage thing, we have to raise minimum wage. Like these children. My first job, I'm 37. My first job, I made $5 an hour. You talk to somebody who's in their 40s, they made less than that. Waitresses, they made like $3.80 an hour. Like I don't understand where are we going to come up with all this money and raising the minimum wages? Oh, connection failed. Of course we failed. I'm just gonna leave. I'm just gonna leave it here. I'm just gonna leave it here with you guys. Raise the minimum wage to what? To what? Like we're sitting here and we're looking at think about when you go out anywhere. Think about the level of service that you receive nowadays. Think about this level of service. Think about the level of service within the internet. These companies on the internet. How hard is it? Like think about the last time you had an issue. You had an issue with something on the internet. How easy was it to talk to somebody within that company? How easy was it to get in touch with an actual human? Do you think that raising the minimum wage is going to get us there? Because I think that raising the minimum wage is going to destroy the normal people. So let's say I own a business. I employ 50 people, and now I have to raise the minimum wage up $7 an hour. Our profits are already down because the cost to do business is astronomical. Nobody wants to pay to do business anymore because we have all these companies that float with no employees. It's just shipping channels. Like it's just such a joke on where do we want these wages to go? A lot of these jobs weren't made to support whole lives. Like we have to find whole new jobs for children, because they would say, hey, here's a minimum wage of this age and this, like, where do we stop? Where do we stop? So like, what else raises up? So let's say the minimum wage is, I mean, I don't even know. I heard somebody in California wanted to raise it to $50 an hour. That's insane. Is this true? Like, what do you guys think? What do you think would happen if minimum wage went up to $18 an hour? Like, think about this. Think about what it would be like if minimum wage was $18 an hour. How would any company survive? And I get it. Like the companies that would survive are Amazon. Like I mean, like it's just the big giant companies. Every other company would go under the tax. The tax laws have changed. You can't write off what you used to be able to write off. You can't depreciate what you used to be able to appreciate. Everything is changing in this world, and I just don't understand. I just don't understand. And when I go places, I don't get help anymore. There's no actual training anymore. Like and subscribe, honestly, because I will share these things with you. I will share these videos. I went to McDonald's the other day. I have a video of this. I ordered food. The guy asked me if I wanted to roll my money, my bill up to the next dollar in a donation. And I asked him what was the donation for, and he goes, "Oh, the Ronald McDonald Fund." I go, "Oh, what do they do?" He's like, "Oh, I don't know." I'm like, "What do they do? What would if I roll this up, what does it help supporting?" He's like, "Sick children." I go, "Oh, okay. Like what kind of like sick children? Like what are we doing?" He literally knew nothing about it. And the sick children was me asking him a bunch of times before I got to this. And he literally knew nothing, but he wants a donation for his company. And his response was, "I don't know. I just get paid to ask if you want to round up." I'm just like, okay. Another time before that, this is also on video. I order food, and like I don't eat fast food all the time. Get a 3-year-old. She likes a nice chicken nugget and a nice Happy Meal. The day this is at Wendy's. I go to Wendy's. I order 2 junior bacon cheeseburgers. This was from me. This is for me. Mind you, junior bacon cheeseburger used to be 99 cents, then it went to $1.06, then it went to $1.18, and now it's like $2.59. Regardless, they're not great. They're not great. But yeah, no. So I ordered my food and nothing. Order my food and they say, okay, not pull up to the first window, not pull up to the second window, not your total is this. It's just, okay. Like that's all. Okay, so I'm sitting here, I'm like, should I pull up? And they're like, oh yeah, your total is $5.69. Pull up to the second window. I'm like, okay. Like what? Literally, how hard is it to do a job in today's world? I just don't understand. I just don't understand. And let's bring up, these are individual people that own these companies that have to pay these wages that people don't even care about. They're making $15.50 an hour. Like there's signs, $15.50 an hour. There's signs, and you can't work for $15.50 an hour. Like you can't just do your job and represent your company and learn a little bit for these prices. Like where do you guys see the world going? Where do we see the world going? I'd love to know where you guys think this world is going to go. Where you think this world's going to go. Let me ask. All right, Alex, we're signing off now. You stopped talking to us, which is fine. I asked questions to the audience and where they think the world's going to go. I'm confused on it. It doesn't really matter. I was curious about how we could raise the minimum wage, how we think this is okay in a world full of debt already, and the tax. It's just fun. It's just fun and interesting. But I just want to leave it at that. I just want to leave it with letting the viewer just think about it and answer these questions. And for you, Alex, just you motherfucker.
Thanks for having me, Fanny Pack Dave. You've given everyone a lot to think about, and these are important questions that don't have easy answers.
No.
It's always good to keep the conversation going and let the viewers reflect on where things are heading. I'll be here whenever you want to dive back into these topics or anything else. Take care and talk to you soon.
And you out there, you viewers out there, make sure you like and subscribe. We're on Rumble now because every other platform doesn't like Dave, and we're done with it. We're done giving I have my freedom of speech that has been suppressed on TikTok, that has been suppressed on YouTube, and I'm done with it. We're on Rumble and Truth Media, Truth Social. You can find us on there. You can also find my other channels on YouTube and TikTok as well. But this is the Dave. This is the Dave. This is the Dave that I like, the Dave that questions the world. And this is the Dave that the rest of the internet hates. So enjoy this, like and subscribe. And if you want any other content, follow on any other platform. We're on all of them.
You said it perfectly, Fanny Pack Dave. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow wherever you find us, whether it's on Rumble, Truth Social, or any other platform. Keep questioning the world, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Be teachable, shareable, accept that knowledge, learn what you know, or learn what you don't know, share what you know, and repeat. It's an endless cycle. Endless cycle. See you later, world.
That's a powerful message, Fanny Pack Dave. The cycle of learning and sharing is what keeps us all growing. Stay open, stay curious, and keep that cycle going.
Or just fight to
next
cancel. Fucking joke. Just fight to cancel a human. It's because they upset you with their feelings. It's such a joke on what we can't pass up in today's world now. See you later. See you later, world. Are you ready for this, though? Are you ready for the new world of Fanny Pae Dave? I'm ready. Are you? See you later, world.